Oftentimes when you first log into Star Citizen, you're in a space station or you're at a city and you start kind of traveling around inside the game. One of the first things that you run into is, of course, NPCs occupying chairs, hopefully sitting in them and not standing on them, because that's kind of our belief is that if you see NPCs standing on chairs, it's maybe time to find another server. But, we see these NPCs populating cities, and they're doing a fairly good job of it. There's still some bugs to be worked out. There are some awkward moments that can occur. There are times when NPCs appear to be doing something in the demonetized category of human behavior. Speaking of YouTube specifically. And there are other times when they're just doing bizarre things in ways that no ordinary people would normally do. Though I do have to admit that on the drive to work, I think about it like a week and a half ago, there was a guy at about 7 o'clock in the morning doing the electric boogaloo right down the middle of a 4-lane street, and driving past him, just veering around like, just in case you decide to dive in front of my car. I don't want to, I don't know what's wrong with you, but I don't want to have to deal with the paperwork and the police. So have a nice day, weirdo. But in general, this is how we see NPCs, is they're kind of almost like furniture, populating certain areas, but you really don't interact with them, right? Now, of course, that is something that is going to change. They're going to get up from those seats and you're going to be able to talk to them to a certain degree, or maybe get missions from them. There are some that do function in that way, though they are fairly limited. And to be honest, like, the missions that they have, not really the best. So there's not a lot of interaction there. But in the future, NPCs, certainly the NPCs that populate your ship, could be very, very interesting. And this is kind of an area of gameplay that we really don't touch on. We talk about various game mechanics. We talk about various ships and how they behave and how we expect them to behave. But apart from acknowledging NPCs as, hey, when you can put in an NPC in this turret, that is going to up the value of the ship. That is going to make the ship a lot more interesting. But we don't really talk about how those NPCs are going to populate your ship beyond, adding certain functionality to, a turreted ship like a Constellation, or, recently we're talking about the Redeemer. Certainly the Constellation nowadays, with good reason, has a lot of fans in Star Citizen, and you can see how just being able, even as a single player, to have those turrets up and running, even though they are not the most immense guns in the world, is going to add value and is going to add power to that ship. And so when you look at something like a Connie, you do have to figure in that what you're playing with is not that ship anywhere near what it's going to be in the live game. But going beyond these things and coming back to the NPCs that populate your ship as your crew members, how far is this going to go? And that, I think, is a really interesting question. And it's something that, we're always talking about the technical aspects of things, but we never really talk about, this end of the NPCs. Are they going to have various personalities? Are you going to talk with them? Is it going to be a relationship with certain members of your crew, not unlike the relationships that you have with, crew members in the Old Republic?
He's burning to death. That's gotta hurt.
Just revive the others and patch them up.
Sure thing. Anything to get away from the burning flesh smell.
Now, with EA, there's a lot of things that we can say about Electronic Arts. And, so there's certain things we can definitely say about BioWare as well. But in truth, the Old Republic, the core central game that it originally was, and the storylines that kind of came out of it, was a masterclass in writing. It was absolutely fantastic. And I mean, even the parts where they would put in humor landed oh so well. And humor in a video game, that is a real tough one to do.
Is that a hairstyle? Or did a womp rat die on your head?
Did you just... Who do you... Shut up!
Now, setting these elements aside, if you think about your relationships with these characters in the Old Republic, these crew members of yours, you would start to care, and it would start to influence the choices you make, you know, their reaction. How would they feel about what you did in the game? Like the actions, the different paths you took. And that was, I think, also a mark of really great writing. As you get to certain key moments in the plot, you know, you would cease to be a little bit silly with your choices and you'd get a little bit more serious and into the moment.
So, you're still alive, huh? You might be worth killing after all. Hurry up and let me out of here so we can settle this once and for all. Unless facing me as an equal frightens you.
The cell suits you. Brings out the scumbag.
Of course. Someone like you could never dream of defeating me. All you can do is ogle like some insignificant bystander. Come on, surprise me. Open the door and face me like a warrior.
I think I'll leave you in there.
I challenge you. I demand we settle this. It's what Song would have wanted. It's what Brayden would have wanted.
Brayden would have wanted to see you just how you are. You don't deserve a warrior's death, scumbag. Let's leave him. Let him die when the ship is ripped to pieces. Works for me.
No! You can't let me die like this! I'm Taro Blood, you worthless piece of filth! I'm the future of the Mandalorians!
So long, Slimeball.
Let me out, Daniel! You can't do this to me! I'm Taro Blood! Taro Blood!
Now, of course, there are certain things that we would have to set aside, right? In Star Citizen. In Squadron 42, obviously, you're going to have people that you interact with on your ship, and they're going to be like, "Hey, Lieutenant, when I first got on this ship, all I could think about was, trying to do my duty and dying well in battle. But after seeing you, I think I just might make it through this war," or something like that. But you're going to have a lot of interesting relationships with various commanders, officers, crew members on the ship, and you will probably care about how those relationships go. But I think that we can, if we craft it well and we leave it open-ended, if we create some kind of system where there are different interlocking components to an NPC's personality that just randomly kind of assemble, you might be able to do a little something interesting in this area. Obviously not weaving the complex narrative that, that supports these characters in the Old Republic, but maybe the beginnings of something very interesting for NPC, not just crew members, but companions. I think that there's an interesting space to explore here, a very interesting space. And I hope that CIG kind of kicks open the door and asks a few questions of what we're looking for in this area, or presents a few, hey, here's some options, here's some of the things that we're looking for. I would be a little bit disappointed if they were just kind of dead mannequins who walked around your ship, or just, like whenever you win a battle, they're like, hey, good shooting, Commander, or, don't worry, Commander, we'll get him next time, that sort of thing. At least, we ran away and lived to fight another day, or, whatever bottled lines that you can come up with. Certainly, when we're encountering NPCs in space and we're fighting them and we keep hearing the same, what are they called? The wild lines that they use in space combat. When we keep getting those same lines fired back at us again and again and again, it kind of pulls you out of it. And you're just like, oh yeah, It reinforces the fact that it's artificial rather than, immersing you in it. It kind of pulls you away from it. But I think that something like that, if it's kind of masked over with a much better system for the NPCs that are much closer to you, I think it's an interesting space to explore and discuss what may or may not be possible. I'm not hoping for what the Old Republic is or was, but at least, something more than something more than what we see right now. But it needn't be what Squadron 42 is quite going to be, or maybe it can be. I just think that we would have to make certain allowances, because obviously what they're creating for Squadron 42 is much like what was created in the Old Republic. There's a grand script there and many branching choices to work on. Whereas with random NPCs, and they would have to be random, right? Not everyone can have a Chem Vol or a vet or whatever, or their equivalents in Star Citizen. But I think I really do think that there's an interesting space to explore here, and I think that it would make these big ships, or medium-sized ships, or even some of the larger small ships, a lot more entertaining and a lot more fun. Because even though I've often had differences with the Old Republic in the way that the game is designed, and there are certain systems in the game that I'm not a fan of, but I have to say the one thing that always keeps it as an icon on my desktop, even if it's not always up to date, is those relationships with those characters. That always brings me back to that game to play it for a little while.
Thank you for watching. So if you want to keep up with the latest and greatest in Star Citizen and Squadron 42's development, please follow us on our social media channels. See you soon.